Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agrii. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. In this episode, I'm talking to two livestock specialists from Agrii, Ben Lowe, National Forage Product Manager, and Emma Gatehouse, Livestock Product Manager. Today, we'll be focusing in on livestock production and, in uncertain times, how can farmers improve productivity that in turn leads to a better, noticeable, improved gross margin. So, firstly, good morning to you both.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Tony.
Well, good morning to you, and it's great to have you on Tramlines. So, Ben, can I start with you and just understand a bit about you? So, tell me really a little bit about your background in farming.
So my family used to farm up in the Yorkshire Dales. My grandparents were the last people to farm as mixed farmers up in the Yorkshire Dales in my family. So I'm sort of the first one to pick the mantle back up, so to speak. So I grew up working on large-scale dairy farms in the Cheshire Plains, and then travelled around New Zealand working on farms there, and then came back and started a career somehow within the seed industry. So as you say, I'm the National Forage Product Manager for Agrii now, but outside of that, we also farm sheep at home myself now. So at any one time, we'll be running around about 120 to 140 head of sheep at home, pedigree texels on an embryo implant-based system.
Oh, fantastic. And actually, I picked this up from a lot of folk that work within Agrii, is that a lot of you do have this real connection within farming, or in fact, are actually practically farming as well. And Emma, that's the case with your good self as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. I'm a mixed family farm in South Shropshire, brought up helping out constantly and still am now with all the aspects of farming life.
Yeah, brilliant. So you both really understand the pressures facing livestock farmers at this time, I guess. So let's ask that question. You know, what are the key issues facing livestock producers, whether dairy, beef and sheep at the moment? What do you think those issues are, Ben?
Well, without a doubt, I mean, at the moment, you know, there is a lot of concern, a lot of conversation around about increasing input costs. But at the same time, in the face of those increased input costs, maintaining but also enhancing still the performance of livestock that is produced on farms. You know, we not only need to be mindful that the cost of production is maintained or at least harnessed as best as we possibly can, but the returns for those in terms of animal performance, farm overall performance is maintained. But of course, we're an industry that doesn't stand still. So, you know, we need to have that progression in performance in the face of increased input costs, without a doubt.
Yeah, and, you know, whether it's arable or livestock farming, that uncertainty with where input costs are going is a real concern, isn't it? On the other hand, in some sectors, we're seeing the possibility of good prices for our produce at the end of the day as well, aren't we? Emma, thinking about your family farm, what is it that really is a key concern at the moment?
As Ben just said, it's the increased costs at the moment. Feed prices are through the roof. At the moment, sheep prices are good, but it's all relative. Buying it back in replacement stock is increasing. It's just hard times out there for everyone. And for us as a company to try and make sure that it all stacks up for everyone, it's hard going. So increased input costs and farm staffing is an issue at the moment. It's getting good staff to help on farm, really.
So it is a wide range of issues and concerns, isn't it? But I'm hearing input costs, replacement stock, but also that cost of labour as well, which I know, Ben, you've mentioned before. So, you know, where does a farmer start in terms of trying to mitigate these risks and create a better outcome for their individual enterprise? Where do you think they should start, Ben?
I mean, without a doubt, you know, the first thing to do is as ever, it's sort of something that I've always done is try and look for the silver lining in any grey cloud. And it's to understand that, you know, that grey cloud needs to be looked at as an individual level. So start looking at what we're currently doing and why, and how that could possibly be improved upon. And the good news is, and the beauty of all this is actually some of the key fundamental changes and improvements that we're seeing in terms of efficiency, cost of inputs, return on investment of inputs, is that quite often it's just simple changes that can be made. We're not looking to discuss potentially reinventing the wheel or totally turning a farm business upside down on its head. It's just looking at these small things that can make massive differences.
So it really is the detail that's going to help make a big difference at the end of the day, turning that grey cloud, as you say, into a bit of sunshine. Yeah. And Emma, from your point of view, where do you think farmers can start to think about mitigating some of these risks and that uncertainty?
Talking to people, really. It's talking to experts like Ben, myself, and people that are dealing with other people within the industry daily. We are getting packed with knowledge, hopefully, to help support farmers and people out on the floor, really. So it's just talking, really. I think it's a good start, would help everyone, really.
Yeah, and talking is also a problem shared, isn't it? And you never know. Other people have that expertise and some good ideas. So, Ben, from your point of view and thinking about forage, how and where does a farmer start to make changes in their forage production on farm, which is obviously a key element of livestock production? Where would you start there?
Well, I think we would basically assess what the grower or the farmer is actually looking to achieve, the system that they're based on, the other forage is that they're looking to produce to be part of a ration or the basis for the nutrition for their farm business. And just, again, taking it back to the basics. So we're looking at, sward performance. If we're talking about potentially concerns about increases in fertilizer costs and things like that, well, actually, how much of any fertilizer inputs or nutrition inputs are your swards actually utilizing? We know in some instances, some very long-term swards can only utilize perhaps 25 to 30% of nutrition that is applied. So are we better looking at doing a bit of rejuvenation of the lays on the farm to actually utilize more of the fertilizer or nutrition that's applied, potentially resulting in using less? Are we looking at producing protein from home? Obviously, we know that a lot of protein for the UK is often imported. So not only is producing protein at home good straight away for livestock that is produced on the farm, but also it has this knock-on effect in terms of sustainability, environmental benefits, and so forth and so forth. So we're really looking at focusing of getting the much out as we possibly can from a single farm and what they have available to them.
Sure. And just to create a bit of a challenge here, Ben, with a question for you. Throughout all of my years in farming, the talk has always been, yes, you've got to get more out of your grassland. You've got to focus on that grassland. I mean, haven't we heard all of this before, or is this now even more relevant?
Yeah, no, we have, without a doubt. There's always been a lot of conversation about getting more out of grassland, but I think this is the time now where the cards are on the table, and we really need to have a look in the mirror and see is this what we're actually doing, or is it just that we're talking about it in many ways, and being open and honest and quantifying what we actually have. Are you looking at what you think is a relatively good grass yield compared to other fields on the farm, whereas actually that good grass yield can still be improved and that quality improved upon even more so. We see it from our breeders and suppliers. We produce and grow all majority of the grass seed that goes into our mixtures. The development in the varieties year on year is tremendous. Whether that be through longevity, whether that be through quality, whether that be through overall yield. So even if we've, updated 5 or 6 years ago, we've done a lot of reseeding, improvements have been made even since then in what is a relatively short, space of time within the industry.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair answer you've given there to that question that I posed to you, which is, you've really got to stop and have a look and seek that great advice that you spoke about, Emma. Emma, do you think that farmers are looking at their grass lays closely enough?
No, I don't think they are. As Ben said, it's looking at the quality. The quality is key, the proteins in there. And if you actually ask the majority of farmers out there, the knowledge of what is in their lay, what clovers, etc., are in there, they probably really don't know. It's been down for, as Ben said, probably many, many years. And it's knowing when you need to reseed and when you need to look at what you've got. So sampling is the best key to see what protein levels are in that grass and the goodness of the soil.
Yeah, very good points made. So we're not just talking about grass here, are we, in terms about, looking at homegrown forage. So some of the alternative crops, Ben, what could they be?
So, yeah, as you say, Tony, I mean, there's lots of alternatives out there. I think we have to be a little bit conscious at times to try and keep them narrowed down to what's actually relevant. It's always easy and very handy to come out with something totally off the wall, creates a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation, a few articles here and there, whereas actually it's just not necessarily always fit for purpose and relevant to the majority of the UK market, really. But without a doubt, advances in the likes of lupins, and we're doing a lot of work on lupins at the moment. I personally have been involved with growing the likes of lupins and soya on a commercial level when I was still on farm. And yeah, the idea, the principle was there, but realistically, we always struggled with relative maturity of the beans that were produced to get the protein available. Whereas now, again, through continuing our trial work, our R&D within Agrii, keeping a weathered eye on outside of the box in many ways. We have identified a couple of varieties of lupins, one in particular that is performing very, very well for the UK. Good levels of maturity and opening doors. But that's just one alternative there, but we still have many more out there to look at, whether it be clovers, as Emma says, red clovers in particular. Lucerne is very popular as well. Again, many myths and misconceptions around lucerne in many ways, but an absolutely phenomenal feed to be grown when looking at feeding livestock.
Yeah, and in the discussion we had actually before today, there was the suggestion that actually sometimes working with an arable farmer local to you can have real benefits in growing some of these other crops. How does that work?
Well, without a doubt, I mean, we've seen it out in some years out of necessity more than anything else. We've seen it when we've had wet winters where, cereal crops have been damaged or not even established. And we've seen it where neighbouring livestock farmers have had a tough time getting maize off, similar sort of establishment time as the arable farmer would be. So, we've got opportunity here where an arable farmer is requiring a spring drilled crop. And the benefits that come from that are highlighted when, we're seeing 20, 30, 40% more yield from maize crops when the livestock farmer works alongside the arable farmer. I think there's huge opportunity for progression of arable and livestock businesses working side by side. And as of course we've seen arable farms and enterprises over the last few years starting to actually require and want livestock integrated within their rotations. So in many cases it's a win-win for both parties in many ways.
And talking of a win-win, Emma, from a farmer's perspective, how can Agrii help?
Okay, so any livestock agronomist, they have links into seed, fertiliser and the livestock department. Like Ben and I are here to support all agronomists and everyone within Agrii. We produced the livestock product catalogue, which is quite a easy reading, in-depth, not quite like an Argos catalogue, but it gives you a broad area of what's available from Agrii, really.
And tell us a bit more about where Riser has been really helpful.
Yeah, we've had a Riser on a local farm just outside of South Shropshire that's looked at what's in the ground, basically. So when we're looking at new grass lays where Ben's involved in, we can hopefully find the right lay. You can look at the mineral level in the ground. So when we're also substituting with bucket feeding, we can help the farmer get the best from the ground.
And Ben, it sounds like the detail is absolutely crucial here.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's One of the biggest talking points is from our livestock farmers, is customers, is around what they're currently doing, how they take things forward. Conversations around, as we've already discussed, looking at producing more homegrown protein, increasing the quality of the forages and reliability of the forages that they're producing on an annual basis. And it is just down to that attention to detail. And as Emma says, in many circumstances, forage yields of any crop and quality, they can quite often also be analysed on a whole farm level. So instead of looking at each individual field and seeing how they're performing against each other, quite often it's only analysed once the whole farm has been mown, picked up and clamped. Then the clamp is analysed, and of course you're only actually sampling a certain section of that farm, depending on what field's in it, where we're starting to see a lot of the big wins in terms of actually taking it down to a field level, never mind a farm level, but down to a field level, looking at what each individual field is requiring, what it's short of, what it may be lacking in, and only addressing those issues where required, field by field.
Sure. And all of this attention to detail and looking at reducing some of the input costs, such as fertiliser, reducing some of the fuel costs in terms of maybe travelling on that ground as frequently as maybe you need to. It all helps with the balance in terms of that environmental balance and towards net zero and achieving, within that Green Horizons umbrella. So this all helps towards that aim as well, doesn't it?
Massively. Without a doubt. I mean, it all goes hand in hand, and you can't have one without the other. And like I say, in many instances, as Emma says, we have individuals throughout the business, so that we also lean on internally, as well as external requirements there. So when it is that a farm business comes to us and says, look, we want to improve on this, we want to try and develop here, quite often it's not just that one individual who answers those questions for you. We will come together as Agrii, and we will answer those questions and give help and support from all the individual strengths within the business. And by having that approach, you're very much bringing in all the key parts of Agrii and getting the best from what we have to offer to help take the business forward.
Yeah, great news indeed. So to finish off our podcast, because unfortunately time is limiting and we could talk to you two for a lot longer, I'm sure. What would be your top tip that you'd like listeners today to take away and think about and even maybe take action upon? So let's start with you, Emma. What would be your top tip?
Speak to agronomists, speak to Agrii. We've got plenty of people within the company, as Ben said, that can help and support. And if we are struggling, we have got outside expertise that we can pull on to help improve everyone's businesses.
And Ben, for you, what would be your top tip to listeners today?
Don't be afraid to ask the question. In many circumstances, we have it where it just may be down to a personal thing where it's easier just to keep going as you normally are. But no, ask the question. There isn't anything such as a daft question. We have options available to us. We have the full master layers range. We have exclusive maize varieties that are selected through significant R&D work that we do. Other forage alternatives, access to proteins, as we say, and a full support through Agrii to answer and give solutions to any of those questions that you may have, or in many cases not actually realise that you have. When you start boring down into where you're wanting to take things forward and develop for the future.
Well, thank you, Ben and Emma, for those really important top tips on how, with some attention to detail, there is a real opportunity to improve the performance of any livestock enterprise during these difficult times. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer-term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. If you have any questions that you'd like us to ask the experts, email info@agrii.co.uk. See you next time.